Well, hello and welcome to everybody on this very exciting occasion, which is the launch and cover reveal of the Nutrition Network's textbook, Ketogenic, The Science of Low Carbohydrate Nutrition in Human Health. This has been in the pipelines and we've been working on it day and night for almost 3 years now, and it's finally in the production phase with wonderful publishers, very world-renowned publishers, Elsevier. And so now we have the opportunity to tell you that it will be out and ready for everybody to read towards the end of April, which is super exciting. And if you keep watching, you will see the beautiful cover, which we are very proud of, which we feel is a really good way of encompassing what this textbook is all about. So we look forward to sharing with you also how this is really the first of its kind, the first evidence-based clinician's textbook, gold standard textbook that you'll be able to hold in your hand to refer to when you are trying to treat any of the major conditions that have really good evidence for their use, for therapeutic carbohydrate restrictions use to treat. So we're very excited to share this with you. And today we have got in front of you our panel of experts today are actually the editors of the textbook. So this includes myself, but I am Tamsin Murphy, registered dietitian, and I work for Nutrition Network. Then we have Jayne Bullen, who's the managing director and also a wonderful editor and the managing editor of this textbook. We have Candice Egnos, who also, without her organization and managing on this textbook, I don't know where we would be. We have Sarah Rice, who is our beady, fact-finding, reference-checking eye on this textbook. She ensured that everything you read is of the utmost quality. The evidence is of the utmost quality. Then we also have got Hasina Kaji, Dr. Hasina Kaji, as one of the medical editors. Absolutely amazing, and also a contributing author. We have Neville Wellington, another one of the medical editors and contributing authors, but he couldn't be here today. And then, of course, we have Professor Timothy Noakes, who always needs no introduction at all, but without whom this textbook would not be. And also not just the lead editor on the textbook, but also obviously an author of many of the key and pivotal chapters within this. Now we have got 67 authors on this textbook, and I have just mentioned a few of those also happen to be the editors. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Jayne, who can tell you a bit more.
Thank you, Tamsin. And just again, to echo what you've said, and to also just a huge bow of appreciation, respect, and gratitude for you and the immense work that you've done, which I know all 67 authors will agree with me, and all the editors will as well. So when you said that we started this book 3 years ago, I would probably say that the book began 5 years ago, almost at the beginning of Nutrition Network. And what we do as Nutrition Network, and what we've done from the very beginning, which began from the Noakes Foundation, was we've said, how can we take the knowledge of low carbohydrate eating and the way that it obviously positively impacted so many thousands of lives through the journey that Prof. Noakes went through as the kind of pioneer of the movement locally in South Africa. How can we take this to the world? How can we improve patient lives? And how can we make the next generation, which is our children and their children, live a better life so that they don't have to go through what we've been through, metabolically, as getting sick and then having to be rebellious and find these answers that didn't exist at the time. And what of course emerged was that there was a training need, and Nutrition Network started to train, and we've built many trainings, over 20 trainings in the last 5 years. But within a year of the trainings beginning, what we started to have as well was a profound body of work that was evidence-based, a huge amount of research that started to happen around what is the evidence, what is the research, and how do we pull this all together. And that was when the discussions of the textbook started to begin, and very much from the doctors, obviously Prof. Noakes, Neville and Hasina, and yourself as well, Tamsin, in our community, the medical professionals started to say, well, this this is how we change academia. And academia is a really, really important part of this, because without there being a textbook, students aren't going to start to learn this. And we have to sort of go almost backwards and start to go back into print from the online life that we've lived for the last 5 years. We have to do something that's in print and that belongs in a university library and on a doctor's desk. So that was where the dream and the vision came from. And then with immense gratitude to Elsevier, and in particular to Hannah van Wyk, we approached them with the idea and they said yes to us. And on we went, and here we are many years later. It's taken 3 years since production started and since the contract was signed with Elsevier International, and then obviously was handed over to the North American team. So to all of the guys that have been worked so hard on the book with us, a huge thank you. So that's just the origin of where we came from. And I know that we're all so proud of it. And there's so many incredible humans that have said yes along this journey that we probably don't have time to name, but we'll find the time as the book rolls out.
Jayne, thank you so much. And I actually remember all of us squeezed into Neville Wellington's little clinical practice office and discussing who we would have authoring this textbook and what we would be including in the textbook. And it feels in a way so close, but at the same time so incredibly far away, considering the Rubicon that it feels like we've crossed since then with this textbook. Because you can imagine I think one of the reviewers from Elsevier, they remained anonymous, but they said that, it was very well the proposal for the textbook to Elsevier was very well received. But the one reviewer I'll never forget said, "This is going to be amazing if you can do it. It's going to be like herding cats." was what the reviewer said. And that stuck in my head because it feels so true. If you can imagine 67 people, trying to get them all to write a cohesive textbook that is meaningful from a clinical perspective, from a scientific perspective, all with different backgrounds, all with different expertise, all with different goggles. Because remember, everybody comes from a background. Everyone, has got a lens with which they see the world and which they interpret the literature, and to try and put it all together in the most scientifically accurate, cohesive way was a bit like herding cats. But you know what? It certainly has not ended up as a cat's choir in the end. It is a beautiful piece of work that covers all of the most important clinical conditions that have been shown to be able to be treated or addressed with therapeutic carbohydrate restriction. So I think let's start by discussing how, before we do, I just wanted to say one more thing, just to add to what you said, Jayne, which is that we went into needing this textbook, or feeling like we wanted this as a handbook to the courses and the training that we were already rolling out for our students, for the healthcare practitioners over the world. And while we have managed to deliver top class courses and training to medical doctors, nurses, dietitians, coaches, and allied health professionals throughout the world, we gave them toolbox items as well, but we could not give them a textbook to accompany the courses. And eventually these trainings need to enter into universities, and we could not provide there was no textbook until this point to accompany this really, really important training. It's almost like books are archaic in a way, like law. It's almost anything that goes into traditional print, it takes years. It almost follows years after the actual findings, the actual literature. But someone has to be the one to put it into print, because without a textbook or a ketogenic Bible, it's almost like it isn't accepted. And that's why I think what we have done with this textbook is so crucial, so pivotal, because it's legitimized and put the evidence out there in the clinician's hands. So let's chat about how we identified all the contributors and how we approached them. Perhaps we can start with Hasina. Can you tell us a little bit about how we went about identifying the contributors, and then maybe Candice can tell us about how we approached them?
Thanks so much, Tamsin. And, it really is such a surreal moment when we go back to birthing. Well, it's birthing now, but when we go back to the drawing board, when we had nothing and we sat and we all looked at each other, all wide-eyed and afraid. How would we approach that? So it's a great moment, and I think, you know, we all need to take that moment. But yeah, I mean, there are obviously some standout clinicians, scientists that are well known, that are well versed, whose work is always backed by robust science. You know, the Rob Siveses of the world, and the Tim Noakeses of the world. But you know, we had to go back to, as you said, traditional training. The thing is that we were teaching a converted audience. When we created Nutrition Network, it was to unite people who already had an interest in many steps ahead of the game into what was causing chronic disease, into the science of insulin resistance and understanding the mechanisms. And as we were providing these courses, as you said, we needed an accompanying text, but we still had the vast majority of clinicians and medical students entering the profession who would only approach this years later. And as you say, medical training is very traditional. And we realized that as much as we were providing that cutting edge science, and even to this day, our modules keep changing, we still needed, the science doesn't change, you add on to it. You know, yes, of course, over time, as you learn more, it evolves. But, you know, as we did that, we realized we had to go back to the traditional textbooks and, you know, go back to the anatomy, the physiology, the pathophysiology, and then identify the people who had already immersed themselves and their lives' work was that particular topic. And really, that was how we approached identifying. Firstly, we had to come up with the list of topics that we needed to cover. And that was huge and took time and took so much editing and evolution before we came up with this and said, okay, this can fit. This is what a textbook should look like. And then I think we all got a huge shock, because when we realized how much there was to it. And I think for me, what was critical was realizing that it proved insulin resistance as the root cause of disease. And then as you went deeper into insulin resistance, you realized, hang on, there's more to insulin resistance. And it was just all the different networks and different areas of the brain that you realized had root cause. So we had to spend a lot of time discussing insulin resistance, and then starting to, as you said, everybody comes from a different vantage point of looking at the end disease and then what caused it. So it was quite a huge task, I think, finding those amazing people and then having to go through the work, which you did the bulk of, Tamsin, and you did such an excellent job. You know, you took so much and put it into such great reading that I enjoyed reading. Yeah, so I think...
Yeah, and I think what you say is so crucial, because as we went through it and we realized just how many conditions are affected by insulin resistance, or have insulin resistance as the root cause or as a common underlying theme, you know, we realized that we just couldn't fit it all in. And I think that was the hardest part for me, was saying, okay, we're allowed this many words, and it's still going to be a tome, but my gosh, it's an inadequate tome, because there's so much more we had to say. And that's why I'm already looking forward to the second edition. You know, because this is just such an expanding, evolving field, as you said. Yes, the evidence was there, and we're building on it, but also there's reinterpretation of the evidence, and I think that's why we went and we found the key conditions, and that's what we had to cover. We had to choose the key conditions. So if any of you go and you get the textbook, which obviously all of you should do, because it is the gold standard textbook in the field of therapeutic carbohydrate restriction, you know, you must please excuse the fact that absolutely every single little thing that could be addressed by therapeutic carbohydrate restriction is not in the textbook because there simply was not space, as sad as it is. So we cover part 1, nutrition fundamentals, understanding human health and disease and diet. We delve into the aspects of evolutionary nutrition with Mickey Vendor and Prof. Noakes, and we dive into the nutritional aspects so that there's a deep understanding for clinicians of how ketones work in the body, how nutrition actually works physiologically in the body, because we want all the clinicians to have a deep grasp of the basics. But we don't just keep it basic. We obviously go into the biochemistry and the physiology of nutrition. And then we move on to part 2, which is the bulk, which is the medical nutritional therapy, or applying therapeutic carbohydrate restriction to endocrine disorders, including type 2 diabetes and type 1 and various other things, cardiovascular disease, neurology, cancer, musculoskeletal and immunological and gastrointestinal. And then we move on to part 3, which is therapeutic carbohydrate restriction for health and fitness, which is in and of itself absolutely exciting, especially with Prof. Noakes's new insights regarding blood glucose versus muscle glycogen, or brain, should we call it brain glucose supply versus muscle glycogen. And then part 4, where we delve into, and I think this is super exciting because most textbooks do not, into the psychological, behavioral, and ethical aspects of nutrition and of therapeutic carbohydrate restriction specifically. An amazing, comprehensive textbook, which is really exciting. But let me not go more into that now. Let's move on to, I said, Candace, I wanted to talk to you about how we went about. Now we've identified the topics, the contents, and we've identified who are the experts, the leaders in the field. And even that was hard because as the field's growing, there are quite a few experts now for each of these, and choosing one is hard. But once we'd identified the experts and they'd accepted, or once we'd identified the experts, how did we go about approaching them, Candace?
So we had to take this hugely ambitious vision of ours and try and communicate it in a single letter to these experts. And these are the best of the best around the world, the Tim Noakes from all over, the experts in their particular field. And we had to try and convince them as to this important project that we're doing and why we needed their buy-in. And luckily for us, everyone who we approached already knew how important this was, and they wanted to be a part of this project. They wanted to be part of this landmark event that was going to happen. So yeah, we approached the different experts via letter, and luckily for us, most of them agreed and very generously gave so much of their time. There was so much that went into each author's contribution, from the references that they had to supply, the hundreds and hundreds of references that they had to supply for every single claim that they made in their submission. The permissions we had to seek for every single image or chart or figure used. We had to get that permission to reuse it in our textbook. So we were very lucky to have buy-in from everyone who we wanted to be part of this textbook. And then once we had their buy-in, it was just about managing a project, managing deadlines, because of course everyone's extremely busy. So setting realistic deadlines and milestones and just making sure we accommodate everyone's very busy schedules, and get those first drafts in and make sure that everything we're putting into this textbook is the highest and the best quality possible. So yeah.
Thank you, Candace. Yes, you're exactly right. I think we must appreciate and acknowledge the benevolence and self-sacrifice of the authors, because this was all done out of the goodness of their hearts, and it is huge. The chapters, again, had to be rigorous. They had to be science-based, and they took a lot of time. And every single one of our authors did it out of their passion and their love for the space, and for their recognition of the need to train healthcare professionals in this space, and to improve, at the end of the day, improve the lives of everyone who's suffering from these conditions that are covered in the textbook. And Sarah really was pivotal to ensuring that everything that went into the textbook was incredibly rigorous, incredibly scientifically based. So Sarah, can you please tell us a little bit about the process that you went through to ensure that this is a top class piece of literature?
Hi, Tamsin, thank you. Yeah, where to start? So I think I came on board about a year ago. I have a real passion for getting the research to clinicians and looking at the research. So this was like a dream sort of job for me as part of my vision. To be a part of this team was just a huge privilege. Yeah, it was a lot of work. I wish I'd started probably 3 months earlier to get through all of the sections, looking at the references, just checking everything, all of the text against the references to make sure that they tallied, just giving my own perspective as well, following the literature quite closely. I'm very much a generalist. So I was able to contribute additional references, maybe improve some of the references. Yeah, I mean, just going back to what you were saying, Tamsin, about it just being a little bit of everything. And at some times I did feel my head was spinning. You know, 1 minute I was in neurology, the next minute I was in endocrine, then I was in sports science. It was really amazing, but fortunately I am a generalist, so bouncing around like that was really up my street. And I think what it brings to the low carbohydrate science movement is just a real overview of everything. It's accessible, research-based resource by clinicians and researchers who have practical experience using this approach. There's practical examples, there's deep science, there's a lot of what I call the origin science, prof notes, and background. Yeah, it was just such a huge challenge when you're trying to include so much.
Yeah.
And I think it's managed to be general and comprehensive, and as much as possible, it covers everything.
Yeah. And thanks. And Sarah really went through everything with a fine-tooth comb. I cannot emphasize that enough. Every single reference that was applied was checked by Sarah. She went into it, basically looked, is that statement supported? You know, it's just an exceptional eye for detail. And I was, you know, it's such a huge project, and I would not have been able to do the editing that I did without Sarah. That's for sure. And I also would like to make a special mention to our intern, Kelsey Mulberry, who, again, she came on right at the end, but she is one of the brightest upcoming minds, and I think everyone in the space of therapeutic carbohydrate restriction should look out for Kelsey. She is going to make big waves in this space, I promise. Even though she is maybe first year university, she is exceptionally bright and exceptionally knowledgeable about the literature. And without her, you know, basically writing the introduction, like summaries, because we ended up needing right at the end to do the summaries of all the chapters, and to support Sarah with the reference checking, and even to rewrite some of the very unwieldy large sections that the authors, you know, there was one very unwieldy large section towards the end that we needed, you know, to have rewritten, and she helped with that, and she was absolutely amazing. So I just would like to give her a special thanks. She worked with us for 2 months, but without it, I don't know if we would have managed to make the deadline. Yeah, Kelsey Mulberry, absolutely amazing contribution. So I just want a special mention. I see, Hasina, you had your hand raised, and then Prof.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something as a co-editor and then also as an author. Every time I see Sarah, I'm like, I want to hide a little bit because there were sections where I mixed up my references. So what I want to say is that for you guys on the other side watching, know that this was not something where you wrote your chapter and sent it in and then you got a hey, thumbs up, great chapter. No way. We were put through the ringer as authors. And thank you so much, Tamsin, because you asked questions. You the way you asked questions that forced me personally and the chapters I co-edited with you to ask myself as an author, do I really understand this? Because I can only answer you if I truly understand that. So you forced me to go quite deep and to question myself. And it was comprehensive. And both you and Sarah went through, I mean, I gave in hundreds of references for the sections that I wrote. And for Sarah to come back, and I had made a couple of wrong references, and to find that and to say, I can't find this that you're looking for. And I was like, oh yeah, that's the wrong paper. You know, I just need the people watching to know that this was not just accepted. I was challenged as an author. Tamsin came back to me and said, can you validate this? That's quite a strong statement. Where is your reference for that? And it forced me to go deeper. And I think Sarah did that for a section as well. So I just want to say that from my point of view, yeah. So thank you both of you for many sleepless nights, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Hasina. Prof.
Yeah, thanks. I'd just like to add to what Hasina said and what other people have said. You know, it's all very well having 67 world authorities produce their information, but if you don't have the backup for the people to produce it, and if those people aren't, listen carefully, equally as good as the authors, or better. And I think Hasina was mentioning that Sarah went through our work with unbelievable care, and that was just remarkable. So my point is that the book, it can have fantastic authors, but if it's not produced by an exceptional group of people, the end result won't be as good as it could be. And I think that the 5 people who worked on this, Tamsin, Sarah, Hasina, Jayne, and Candace, you elevated the book to another level. And if it hadn't been for you, it would have been just another textbook. But you've taken it to another level. And how could you do that? Because you have to be very special people attracted to this cause, to have put so much time into it as if it's our baby and we've really looked after it. So I just want to make that point that, yes, we had brilliant authors, but the authors have been raised to a different level by A, all combining, and B, by having you as a group to get this together. So the book will be a massive success, not just because of the authors, but because of the 5 people who took it to another level. And thank you very much for that, because people will realize when they read this that this is an exceptional book.
Thank you, Prof. And obviously also yourself and Neville. Thank you. Sarah, you want to say something?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to say that it is just such a privilege to have worked with such an amazing group of people, but also just that in that complexity, we also stronger together. And that's really the point that I wanted to make, is that we all bring something to this. We all bring our superpower, our special skills, you know, our training, our background. And I just wanted to just highlight that one thing. It's together we're stronger. In collaboration, there is challenge, but it also is iron sharpens iron. You know, we're better together. Yeah, and I really believe that as a community as well, that coming together and collaborating and communicating and working together on projects is how we can put out the very best and the most excellent work.
Definitely. Jayne.
Yeah, Sarah, thank you so much for saying that. And I wanted to just echo it again, which is obviously, you know, and it's been a consistent story that I've seen since the honor I've had of being part of the Nutrition Network, is just how, as a community, as a scientific community, as an inquiring community, how we are a network. And how we do work on things together. And that is what our strength is the incredible, extraordinary lecturers, that have said yes to us over the years. There's too many to count. And every time we put a piece of work out into the world and we say, oh, these are the people we'd like to be contributors, we'd like to be experts, it's astounding for me how they say yes, and how each one of you, particularly with this book, each one of this, these 67 authors, I mean, it's astounding to believe that we've actually pulled together a book with 67 authors and more editors than are just in this little Zoom room, because there were a whole lot of other researchers and contributors that edited different pieces of it over the years. It's so immense, and we are such a global community. And I keep having to pinch myself at how lucky I am and how lucky we are that we're part of this together, and that we're building something that is going to change the future potentially of life on Earth, or certainly the health of future generations on Earth. So my huge respect and gratitude to everyone that's been involved.
Jayne, I think what you've said now is actually incredibly significant, which is about the significance of this textbook. Your words that it's going to change the health of future generations on this earth. I think we must all just sit with that for a minute, because that's what this is. It is the handbook that hopefully and should change clinical practice, change the way humans are treated medically. So Prof, could you maybe elaborate on this for us? Could you tell us about what you think the potential impact of this book is? What is the significance of this piece of literature?
I was just thinking, I read recently, one of the leading people who studied energy expenditure across populations, he's been to see the Hadza, he's seen what they've eaten, he's seen how healthy they were, gone to other so-called primitive, that's a word we shouldn't use, but unindustrialized communities who are continuing to eat their traditional foods and are extremely healthy. And he describes going to his daughter's 7th birthday party, and all the food that he sees there has got nothing to do with what the Hadza eats. So he doesn't see the distinction between his work and what he's showing, that it's the traditional foods that keep you healthy. And he's one of the premier scientists in this area, and yet he allows his daughter to have a birthday party where it's all ultra processed foods and sugar and addictive foods. And I think that's the problem. I've just been to town, and a guy came up to me and he said, "You're looking good." I said, "Yeah, I'm at gym." He said, "Yeah, I'm also going to gym, but I can't get rid of my belly." I said, "Yeah, because that's got nothing to do with gym. That's what the sugar that you're eating." And the concept just hasn't got through. So, but there's another little point that's happened recently. Chris Palmer's written the book, Brain Energy. And he shows that most of the mental disorder, or he claims that the mental disorders, including bipolarism and schizophrenia, are reversible on this diet. But he's a professor at Harvard. And in 2016, he didn't know that. So in the last 6 years, through his observations of his patients whom he puts on the diet and they reverse the diseases, he's begun to realize that there's something wrong in the brain of people, and it's a metabolic disorder in people with chronic mental diseases. And so the mental disease is a disease of nutrition of the brain. So that's another massive advance for us. So to come back to your point, at least we are, sorry, let me restructure that. When we started the book, I put that quote in about the one doctor who said, who taught me to eat a high carb diet. And he's from New Zealand. And he said that the low carb diet is the one diet for which there's absolutely no evidence. And he said that in 2014 or something, or 2016 in the Lancet, published in the Lancet. So now we know that that's not true, that we've provided the evidence. And the key is clear, that this diet has the most evidence of any diet ever studied on this planet. And so we've been able to put that together. What's it going to do?
I think what you've said is so key. I mean, the significance is clear that this is the evolutionary consistent diet that humans are supposed to eat, that even those who know are still making mistakes when it comes to falling into the cultural norms that stipulate what we should eat, be it at birthday parties or, and so I suppose my understanding is that you're saying that this is hopefully going to give this very evidence-based dietary intervention more traction, and hopefully make it more normative, as it should be, because this is what humans are supposed to be eating and have eaten through the majority of our history. And then also and then also say that, you know, it's really what is going to make humans healthy. I think that's how I'm interpreting what you've said, Prof. Would you agree?
Yeah, and the fact is that most medical disorders now, because now we can add all the mental disorders, which we do in the book, but I mean,
Because of
now
all
we've
the
got even
additional
more
evidence that has come about in the last 6 years.
Yeah, exactly right. And what's going to happen in the next 6 years, for example, cancer and nutrition, which it looks to me like there's a strong link between nutrition and cancer, and particularly sugar. That's the focus is becoming more and more on the role of sugar and insulin resistance. So I think the problem is, and we repeat this, is that people don't like to say they were wrong. and the medical profession is very reluctant to say that it's promoted the wrong diet, and it's being paid not to say that. And the industry makes sure it controls the profession to make sure that if you do say that, you get cancelled.
So, Prof,
as
how are we
happened to
going to get
me.
this into medical learning? How are we going to get this into universities?
well, I would like to take the book to the Dean of Medicine at the faculty that cancelled me and say, you know, you cancelled me for saying that this diet cures all these conditions. That was in 2014. Here's the evidence. What are you going to do about it? And we could go to all the medical schools around the world and say that. But yeah, it's going to take a long time. I think eventually the people are going to realize, and government's going to realize, that they have to start promoting this. Even the hospital at which I worked and was trained, they've suddenly realized that diabetes is a real problem, but it is reversible. And they slowly edging
and
towards
being incorporated
that.
into guidelines for diabetics. And I think you make a good point, Prof. I think it really has to be taken to the deans. It has to get into the medical training, and it has to become normative. It needs to be recognized for the sake of humankind, for the sake of human health, into the universities, into the best practice guidelines.
It usually takes at least 20 years, and that's because the people who promote it have to die. The people who promoted the bad stuff have got to die and be replaced by a new group of people who see the truth and who aren't committed to the failed model.
If they're going to be eating all that processed food, then it might take less than 20 years, Prof. But Hasina, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, so Prof, I want to respectfully disagree with you. I'll tell you why. When we had a panel discussion with Robert Lustig, he said exactly what you said, that it takes X number of years to see the change. And I want to bring everyone's attention to the fact that 5 or 6 years ago, where we were versus where we are now, with thousands of trained practitioners that keep coming back for more, with my own learning and understanding more and more about the science of insulin resistance, I totally disagree, and I refuse to accept that it's going to take 20 years, because I can see that more and more and more people are changing. And unfortunately, sadly, but also thankfully, in many cases for doctors, what propels the change is their own health deterioration. How many doctors have we seen who are runners gaining weight and their times are dropping, or they've developed diabetes and they've reversed it? And so many people come to us researching methods to reverse their own diabetes, to reverse their own obesity. So I think that we're going to see this change quicker. I truly believe that it's happening as we speak. Just looking at the number of people on Team Nutrition Network, Team Therapeutic Carbohydrate Restriction globally, from whichever angle they're looking at it. And the second thing I wanted to say is that I would like to know from the universities, and I don't think it's being taught yet. I checked, I think it was last year or the year before. Are you teaching medical students anything about insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity, the science behind it? Because it's the comment is made, this patient develops hypertension, diabetes, they've got to that point, and these are the chronic diseases related to insulin resistance. And, you know, there's a hint of suggestion of carbohydrate restriction, and that's sort of as far as it goes. If insulin resistance is a real thing, then surely, if here's the textbook teaching you about the science of insulin resistance, surely that is something, if it's linked to so many chronic diseases, let us not forget, as somebody said, that it is the patient who is central. The reason why we all do this, why we're all so passionate about this, is because at the core of this, at the center of this, is a person who is suffering needlessly. And if we went into medicine to help relieve some pain, some disease, to be a part of the solution, then is this not a huge part of the solution? And I think that that is the angle from which it needs to be approached, that if there, you know, here's the science, you can't argue with the science. So read it. Here's a free copy.
I think that is so key. I think you've mentioned two things, that this is really about solving the pain and the disease of humanity. And I know that sounds all high and mighty and pie in the sky, but it's the truth. Medical practitioners go into the space because they have watched their parents suffer, their grandparents suffer, their brothers or their sisters suffer, their best friends suffer, or themselves, or it's out of self-discovery and self-improvement, self-growth, self-healing. And the thing is, what we want to see is not more money in the pockets of the major big pharma. You know, this textbook is certainly not about profit. It is about doing right by humans, by people, and and relieving the suffering to a degree. And Cecina, you keep mentioning the science, and I think that is key. So this is evidence-based, scientific. Yes, we delve into the grassroots of things, the evolutionary history of humankind, the physiology and the biochemistry of how we work and how nutrition applies to that. But also I would like to highlight one of the key features of this textbook, and that is the case studies. This textbook is full of case studies which take the science, take the evidence, and put it into clinical practice. So if you are a medical practitioner and you pick up this textbook and you look at the chapter on Alzheimer's or on mood disorders or on type 2 diabetes, you are not just given the science and then you have to figure out how to apply it. You are given case studies of how the science is applied in clinical practice by experts and practitioners who have gotten results. So you're getting real life case studies to help you apply it in your own private practice or your own public practice or whatever, your own practice. And also key tools that you can use as well in the form of these images and tables. So I just wanted to mention that it is taking the science, taking the evidence, and making it practical. So I really wanted to highlight that. Sarah, I just wanted to, we need to move on quickly. So if you could say what you want to say in like 1 minute, and then I wanted to just take it to Jayne and ask the last question.
Sure. I just want to make a quick plug for case studies. Actually, for clinicians who are seeing results with unusual conditions, please do consider writing case studies, writing it up. I know that's a lot of work, but it would really help us to see more of those kinds of things coming through in the literature. It would really start to help people to ask questions and to just bring more awareness. Thanks.
Yeah, that's really important because it takes a huge amount of funding and a huge amount of organization to get randomized control trials and other studies going. And sometimes one needs a certain critical mass of anecdotal or case studies before it kind of converts into enough impetus for the universities to start studying what is being seen in clinical practice. So it's the people on the ground level, on the front lines, who are seeing the big changes first, and the literature next, and then unfortunately the textbook and medical training even after that, which is why this lags behind, which is why it's about time we get this out there. But now, Jayne, can you tell us, please, about the Nutrition Network's role in continued professional development? Because we've brought together the best of both worlds, the textbook now, as well as what we started with, the online training. Can you tell us about our role in that as Nutrition Network?
Absolutely. I think that what we've figured out over the years is that we have to be there with people through their journey. And we, when we created Nutrition Network 5 years ago, it feels like many more, we were hoping to train a couple of local South African doctors and physicians. That was our goal for the first year. It was to really create a path for referrals. And of course, what happened was that it became very quickly a global movement, a global community. And it plays into what you've just been talking about, but what we never expected, or certainly what I never expected, and what continues to amaze me, is the fact that we have everyone throughout the journey of life that is acquiring this knowledge. So it's not just doctors and physicians, it's nurses, dietitians, nutritionists, oncologists, veterinarians, obstetricians, anesthesiologists, like the neurologists, neurosurgeons. It touches on every aspect of medicine and healthcare. And then we have people like lawyers and policymakers that are coming and wanting to step into this arena because they understand the food system and how broken it is. So the way we see it is that we're going to continue to be a partner of yours wherever you are in the world, and whatever the work is that you're doing around advocacy and changing patients and your own family lives. That's where it comes down to, is like what we feed ourselves and our children. And within the professional community, we continue to have global CPD for all of our trainings. Within the advisor community, we're going to keep finding ways to support you. We've got the most amazing curriculum lined up for next year with some incredible big topics that we're excited about, and some new areas. And one big area of focus that we're starting the year off with is obviously addiction and addictive eating, or behavioral change as well, that fits into that area. And then we're stepping straight from there into women's health. We've got a women's health summit, and we're looking really deeply into women's health and what it means as a woman, and how this differs from kind of the overall Panacea low carb community, what the unique aspects of it are. So much to look forward to. I hope that answers your question, Tamsin.
Jayne, thank you. There is so much to look forward to this coming year. When I look at our lineup, I get super excited. And I also want to say that we're also updating our professional training, which is also so exciting, and it's going to be in line with this textbook, because as we've all mentioned, science moves on, and it's our responsibility as the global leaders in therapeutic carbohydrate restriction training to ensure that all of our members are up to date. And our professional training, was launched a few years ago. And so we're really excited to add to that science and update the training, and to bring it in line with the textbook, and moving forward to make the most complete, holistic, and evidence-based and up-to-date training and training material possible. So I'm going to hand over now to Jayne, who is going to do the most exciting part of this talk, which is reveal the textbook cover. Please, over to you, Jayne.
So I have never personally published a textbook before. I've been very involved in publishing throughout my life from different perspectives, and Prof. Noakes has published many books in the years that I've worked with him. So we've got a lot of publishers, but this was very unique in that there are a lot of very stipulative rules around what can be on the cover of a textbook. So if you've ever seen a textbook and thought, goodness, what a strange cover, it looks very bizarre. It's because it's very stipulative. So textbooks have to have an image on the cover, or several, I'm not sure if you're aware, that refer to the content in the book. And that in itself was it took us many months of debate, and I would say even argument at times, to figure out what that image could be. And we went through, Tamsin and Candice, what version would you say this is of the cover? I would like to say 4065, but you're both more precise than I am.
Candice, you say. I'm more of the content person. Candice and Jayne are very much the marketing people.
You're muted, Candice.
This is probably version 10.
At least. That's very, very conservative. So we have been through various iterations, and the first, we've had, women running up hills, we've had raw steaks or bottles of olive oil, things that we just said hell no. Then we then various other versions of it. So a huge gratitude to our designer that helped us, and then also to the design team at Elsevier International, who's been so accommodating and innovative with us amidst their stipulative rules. We found something that we all loved in the end, after so many rounds of discussion and many months, and it's really interesting with a project like this, which is so important and has felt so big and has taken so long, is the little things which are actually the big things, like the name of this book and the cover, that have taken, I'm not going to say as much time and effort as the write-up, because that would be completely incorrect, but are really important. So let's just share it. So for everyone that hasn't seen it, just introducing, ta-da, our cover. Ketogenic, the science of therapeutic carbohydrate restriction in human health. Edited by the Nutrition Network and 67 friends, contributors, and at least 10 or 11 editors. So just breathing out and sharing it. There we have it, our beautiful egg. One of our best friends in the ketogenic world. Prof, any thoughts or comments?
Speechless.
I think it looks great. I think that's fantastic, because it's so unusual and unexpected. And as you said, you had all the other covers and all the stakes and the runners and so on, but this is kind of gets to the basics. So I'd like that. And also to see the Nutrition Network so prominently on the cover, more space than Academic Press, the AP, is also really nice. So I think the Nutrition Network has definitely arrived. If it hadn't already arrived, it's definitely arrived in the global consciousness with this publication.
Thanks, Prof. Tamsin, I'm going to hand back over to you.
All right. Well, I think, Jayne's quite right. We have so many different opinions on this textbook cover, and you're dealing in the space, as many of you know. You're dealing with did we evolve on the land, on the plains, and our brains evolved by eating bone marrow and cracking bones open? No, we evolved by the shore because we got our omega-3s from, the seafood. And then, you have the land group, and you have the fish group, and then you have the Mediterranean group, and then you have the carnivore group, you must only eat saturated fat, and then we have the group that says vegetarians can be just as healthy, and then other people say, well, no, they actually can't, and then so within this, everyone's agreeing therapeutic carbohydrate restriction is the way to go. And everyone's agreeing we want humans to eat an evolutionarily consistent diet. You don't expect giraffe to live on hydrangeas when they're supposed to live on acacias. You don't expect panda bears to eat crickets when they're supposed to eat bamboo. You don't expect lions to eat chickens. They get fat in captivity on chickens, even if they chase them. They're supposed to eat buck. My point I'm making, and is made in the first chapter by Prof. Noakes and Mickey Bendall, is we agree. Therapeutic carbohydrate restriction, humans must eat their evolutionarily consistent diet. But then it's like, okay, within that, what do we do? And everyone agrees basically in the space that, eggs are one of the foods that are appropriate within this diet. And so it's so funny that we ended up with this, but it's almost symbolic in a way, I feel, with the kind of the shape of the egg. It's almost like a full stop. It's almost like, okay, definitive in its representation. So yes, it's a food that is a keto appropriate food, or a therapeutic carbohydrate restriction appropriate food, but it also looks like it's like, that's it, we're there. And I like that. And I think the color is also positive. It's, yellow is an optimistic color, and we are optimistic. We are not about putting eggs on people's faces. That's not what it's about. It is about looking forward and improving the health of our patients, of our clients, of our family members, and of ourselves, almost like a sunshine. So I think there's so much, if we wanted to go into an English literature or a marketing discussion about this, I think you make of it what you will, but I think it is positive, and I think it is definitive, and I think it is, growing also. An egg is just the start. It's just the start. It's going to turn into a chicken. So anyway, I'm going to stop this now. Before I close, Hasina wanted to say something.
I just want to say something quickly. The thing about the egg is it highlights that we're sick because of what we eat. You can take a multitude of vitamins and run and eat all the bad stuff, and you're not going to get as healthy as you will get by changing what you eat first. Number two is, as you said, it's a basic food, and the people who are all on Team Keto and understand therapeutic carbohydrate restriction will agree that egg is a superfood. Number three is that it's affordable, and it unifies that health is more or less available to all, because it is such a cheap option as a superfood. And number four is that it's quite confronting, and it shows our edge, because there's going to be the team, oh, you're not supposed to eat you must eat one egg every second day because egg pushes up your cholesterol. So, it's challenging in that way, and that's who we are. We're on that edge. So I love that. And I mean, I just want to say that the cover is great and it's pretty and all of that. I never bought a textbook because of the cover. I don't think anybody would. But I think definitely what sells is it's when you feature it in your office, it's going to look good, which is great, but it's what's inside the textbook that's really going to sell.
Definitely. Thank you, Hasina. Would any of the other editors like to say some closing words? Jayne?
Yes, I just wanted to answer. I know in the live, I'm seeing in the feeds, there are a lot of questions about the book, where people can get it, where it is, where it's going to be. So we will post, the team will be posting in this live and straight after this, a link to Elsevier International. It's available now on order for pre-sale. The book is not completed. It's in production in North America. It's being finalized. It will be published formally in April 2023. And as I said, you can order it on pre-sale, and it's available absolutely everywhere in the world. You order it from the USA offices. So it will be available wherever you are. I know a lot of South Africans have been in the text asking where they can get it. Don't panic. It's going to come here. And yes, it is a tome. This book is how many thousand words, Tamsin?
Oh my gosh, it's 225,000 or something, but I think we overdid the references. So it's a big book. It's a big book.
Yeah, so be prepared to get a heavy parcel delivered to your door when you do get it.
And we still didn't manage to cover everything we wanted to. It's amazing. It's just such a huge and evolving field full of evidence. Sarah?
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to say what stood out for me was, of course, the science, the words, the science in a different color. So that's all I'm going to say on it. Yeah, a lot of work went into that part, and so that's really important.
Yeah, that is, as Hasina and Sarah have said, the science, the content, the evidence, it's there. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Would anyone else? Candice, did you want to say any parting words?
I'll just echo what somebody said in the chats, that I think it's an excellent cover.
It's an excellent cover. That's awesome. Prof.
Well, just thank you again. This has been a wonderful hour. And I think the people who watch it will now understand where the textbook came from, why we did it, and why we were successful in producing it. And the success is because we managed to attract the best in the field, who all donated their time for zero reward. Just remember that every chapter is written by people who gave their time for free. Why? Because money can't buy this. This is beyond money, what we're doing. It's, as you've said, we're changing the world, and this is going to change the world. So I'm very excited, and I think that we can't actually predict what's going to happen after April, but it's going to be very good. The people can no longer say that there's no evidence. They now have to acknowledge that this is the best diet, it's the most thoroughly studied diet, and it's the most effective diet. So that puts to pay all the criticisms we faced over the last 10, 20 years on this diet. You know, I wonder what Robert Atkins would think if he was alive today, who produced, you know, the first popular book on the low carb diet in the modern era. Of course, there were many people before him, but he was the one, and he suffered for that. But he definitely had a major role in getting us to where we are today. So again, just thanks to everyone for all the hard work that they put in on this, and let's take the world forward and make sure that we do convert the medical profession. And I certainly hope Hasina is absolutely correct and that I'm totally wrong, and that the change happens within the next year or two. So
Yes.
what we need to
Well,
see
definitely
is
this textbook will help
Yeah.
with that, because it's coming out in April, no 20 years
Exactly
down the
right.
line. So
Yeah.
maybe this is one of the catalysts for the increased speed of reaction.
Exactly right. So let's
Thank you,
hope the
thank
growth is exponential and it happens. Here's the time, the book's published, and there's an exponential change in the medical profession's approach to the low carbohydrate diet.
So to all of our listeners, please be part of that exponential change. Go out and buy the book, pre-order the book from Elsevier, Amazon. You get your copy, have it in your office, and start changing the world. I know you already are, but you know, continue to change the world with us. Thank you, and goodbye to everybody.
Happy
Thanks so
holidays.
much. Bye-bye.